So now in this portion of the course, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be playing a couple different solos for you. And within these solos, I'm actually going to be improvising most of them. So the point of me demonstrating this is to show you how I'm going to use some of the licks and some of the ideas that we've talked about throughout, the different techniques within this course, as well as the different, licks and melodic ideas that I was conveying as I was playing through some of these examples. So I'm going to be using those as I improvise, and you're going to see that as I play through the solo, what I'm trying to do is create something that's melodic and memorable and feels like, something that you'd maybe want to sing or something that you could imagine said back to you, right? So that's kind of my goal as I solo through these and as I improvise over these. So I'm going to just improvise over the track, and then we're going to come together and break down what exactly it was that I was playing. I'm going to talk through some of the ideas I was using, and then after we do that for a practice scene, we're just going to play the track for you, and you can do the same exact thing. You can try to replicate some of the licks that I was doing, as well as do your own thing over that backing track, so you can also explore how you could create melodic ideas over our different tracks. So without further ado, let's try this one. This one's kind of in the style of a modern pop and country song, kind of a mashup. People like Carrie Underwood are artists who come to mind when I put together this track, or maybe Keith Urban. So let's see what this track sounds like and what we can come up with. So to start this off, you could hear this backing track kind of has an A and a B section. The A section, it's going to be the same, just G, to C. That's basically our underlining chord progression, and that doesn't change. But you can hear the B section has a little bit more intensity. The organ kind of goes up in a little bit more of a higher register, and the drums start incorporating more of the cymbals and more of the ride cymbals that, kind of has this powerful, impactful, chorus-like feeling to it. So what I tried to do to replicate that within the solo, as you could hear to start off, I was just trying to basically play a melody, right? So I was trying to not just solo and show how fast I can play or, get to something extremely technical right off the bat. I was actually just trying to kind of outline the chord progression and, give the listener something to kind of hook onto. That way, when the guitar starts taking the forefront of the music, it's something we can focus on and listen to, and we can go, okay, the guitar is kind of telling the story of the music now. So to start off, I was basically just doing this little introductory lick. So I was outlining G major, and I'm using these sixth intervals, which are super common in country music and pop country music, where I was going from the 4th fret of G to the 3rd fret of E, and then I'm picking with my pick, and I can either pick both of those notes, or I can use my chicken picking if I want to, where I'm using my ring finger here. So I'm doing that. Then I'm doing 5th fret of G, 5th fret of E, and then 7th fret of G and 7th fret of E. And then, if you notice, I just did the same thing for C major. So you can see, I'm going from G to C here, and I was doing the same thing, just trying to outline that. So now I'm here at C major, and I'm doing that same little pattern here. So that's 9 to 8. 10 to 10, and 12 to 12, and now that's all on the G and E string, just like here. And you can hear when I play just that, you can already hear the underlying chord progression, right? So that's something we talked about within our arpeggio portion of this course. We're really trying to outline the chords as they go by. So that little introductory melody that I played in the A section, so what happened here, so I played the G major chord, right? I went up to the C major chord and I did, a lick that was extremely similar. Then I went back to our original lick, and then I created a new ending, right? So this is something we've been talking about with a lot of the different licks, is I'm trying to repeat things, I'm trying to have reoccurring motifs, but I'm trying to have different endings so that it feels like these are complete musical phrases. So there's a really big difference between just repeating something over and over and over again to the point that the listener kind of gets bored or annoyed with it, as opposed to repeating something so that it feels like a reoccurring idea that you're still demonstrating, is going to different places. So for that second ending, I'm sliding up to the 4th fret of G, then playing the 3rd fret of B, and then sliding right back down to the 2nd fret, and then I'm doing this little trill here. So I'm going to 2, to 3, to 2 on G, and that's all just from a slide, and then I'm doing open, so. And then I'm just doing a hammer on, open D string, 2nd fret of D, open G, right? And so as I played through this, I kind of started off in this whole shape right here. So I was just playing licks that were really similar to the things we were talking about. I focused in on this 5th fret, right, which would be the 2nd note of our major scale. So I'm imagining my major pentatonic right here. And that was kind of the bass shape when I started out the solo when we got into the B section. So I was just kind of playing around in that tonality. And now I'm slowly working up so that I can get to this second kind of major arpeggio shape that's at a little bit higher register. So that's the second shape that we talked about, right? So I'm now considering this G up here on the 15th fret. So 15, 12, 14, 12, 14, 12, 14, 12, 15, 12, 15. Right, so it's the same shape that we've been using, and these are the two core shapes that I talked about when I introduced the major pentatonic scale. And you could see, when I was doing my solo, those were the two shapes that I was really kind of focusing in on. So as I kind of went up my guitar, I started to pedal on that little point again, so this is something that's come up in a lot of my different licks in both major and minor contexts. Is I was doing this little pedal lick where I have my pinky here on the 15th fret of B, and then I'm bending here with my ring finger on the 14th fret of G. And then you could see at 1.2, I just kind of descended my major pentatonic scale, because the major pentatonic and the minor pentatonic, they're both really great scales, because since they're only 5 notes, it's not like our full major scale or our full minor scale where even though there are some notes that, every note will technically work over our chord progression, there might be some notes where it's like, it's probably not the best choice. But with our minor pentatonic and our major pentatonic, pretty much every note sounds good, right? Oh, in this context. So even if I want to just walk up and down my scale, it sounds pretty good in that context no matter what. So that usually always makes its way into one of my solos as well. And in this context, I basically just walked down the major pentatonic scale. So that's just going 15, 12, 15, 12. Then I did this little kind of pattern here where I went up to 14 on G, back to 15, 12 on B, 14, 12 on G, 14 on D, and then 14, 12. Right? Just using those notes of the major pentatonic scale really sound good over this. So that was my basic thinking with this, right? I wanted to come in strong with a reoccurring motif that really kind of grabs the listener, and something that's simple. You could also see I was using a lot of space with that too, right? Something that we forget about when we're soloing is to take a breath and to let our ideas breathe, because if we just play these long continuous statements with nothing in between them, the listener isn't going to really be able to hear any sort of distinction. And it's very, very different to be a guitar player playing a solo instead of somebody in the audience or another musician absorbing the solo, right? So it might feel like you're being, too quiet or leaving too much space, but I promise you it's usually the other way around where you're not leaving enough space. So as you create these ideas, you want to try to be very, very distinct and then leave some space and then try to come up with a response, right? So it's very kind of call and response is something that's, really integral to blues music and, all American music that's kind of preceded blues music and come after blues music. So that's an element that we want to try to incorporate in our solos, since blues is such kind of a core foundation of rock and modern music. So use as much space as you can. Try to come up with some of your own licks or use some of the licks that we've talked about for the major pentatonics. See if you can outline some of the arpeggios like we've talked about as well, and see if from the transcription of this lesson you can pick up some of the licks that you particularly liked and implement them in your own solo over the practice scene.